Alright, hello everyone. This video is going to be showing one of three options on how to make a laser engraving project using the layering method. So already we've had the tutorial video posted online for making a complex design into a vectorized shape using Adobe Illustrator. So that's the example that I'm going to use first, which is the map version. So first thing I'm going to do is how I modified my map to have the water be set below the streets was first I went into Photoshop, create a new document, and with that new document I am going to give it the parameters of the size of design that I want to make. So I'm going to set my units of measurement to inches, and I'm going to work within the photograph size of a 7-inch wide by 5-inch high photograph. I'm going to set my resolution to 300, CMYK color mode, and a background content of transparent. Create my document, and then I've already gone through the steps of making my map on Snazzy Maps, so I'm just going to place the image that I got from Snazzy Maps, which is going to be this New York PNG file. So there's my map, and then I can resize this map to fit within my workspace. So I'll just size it for the height. I'm just going to adjust it so it's in the middle, and just making sure that I don't have any white borders around any of the edges. So I'll click that to confirm. And now here's where I get into a separation. So on the bottom right here, I have a layers plane. And in this panel, what I'm going to do is I'm going to first rasterize my layer, so now I could work with it. So this allows me to do things like take the eraser tool and start erasing things and modify this image. So what I'm going to do now is make a duplicate layer. And this duplicate layer I am going to name water. And then another time I'm going to duplicate again. And this one I'm going to call streets. And then I'm going to just double click on the name of my first one, and I'm just going to label it original so that I know that that's my starting image. And what I'm going to do is turn the eye icon off on the original so it's no longer visible. And I'm going to start with the water, so I'm also going to hide the streets layer. So now what I want to do is I can use a tool like the magic wand and start selecting layers, but right now when I select on the water, it's also going to select the streets. So what I'm going to want to do, let's just deselect that to begin with, is start taking my eraser tool and separate some of the segments of the water layer. I'm just going to zoom in from the streets. So I can do this here, separating the streets. I don't have to delete all of this area, but I can. But what's important is I'm just dividing the streets from the water. So again, I'll come in on the left here, start deleting these segments until what I start to get is only the water remaining. And if I'm ever unsure of what part of my image I want to keep as a segment of the water as compared to what are the parts of the streets that I want to keep, I can just look at a map image of New York, because that is the city that I focused on for this example, and then I can just check to see what is in fact water and what is in fact a bridge or a street. Okay, so I'm just going to delete a little bit of this, and what you'll see is as you start to delete sections and disconnect the streets from the water, is now when I go back with that same magic wand tool and click on the water, the streets in the center here are not connected and therefore do not get selected. So now if I zoomed out, I'll just fit everything onto the screen, you can see now with my selection, my streets on the left are still selected because they're still connected in this area and this area, but that center section is no longer connected, so it's been removed. So now if I inverse my selection, I could take that same eraser tool, and now I could just start erasing everything over the water, and it's going to delete everything that was not separated from my water layer. That's going to give me a nice clean removal of all of those details. to only leave the water. Okay, so I would do that to separate the water layer from the streets. And then the neat thing with this is what I could do then, I'm just going to crudely remove the rest of this just to show you an example here, is let's get all this water separated. Go back to my magic wand, select my water, we'll inverse our selection, and we can take that eraser tool again, start deleting everything, or I can really just simply hit delete on my keyboard. So now I've deleted everything. I'm going to deselect and view my screen. So again, I did a crude job here, but for the purpose of showing you this next step, for my layer with the streets, all I do is take that magic wand tool, select my water, hide my water layer, go to my streets layer, make it visible, and then all I do on this layer is just hit delete. Because I've selected the water, what it's going to do now is remove the water from the street layer. So now I've got a layer that is the water, a layer that is the streets, and together they combine to make the original. But one thing is missing. There's bridges in this city that go over top of the water. So I want to add those back in for when I cut out my map. So I'm just going to take the line tool and I'm going to draw a line where there is needing to be a bridge. And this line right now isn't thick enough to match the street map. So what I can do is go to the layer menu, go to layer style, and choose stroke. And what I can do now is change the thickness of my stroke to match the thickness of the street on the map, as well as I can change the color to ensure that it's the same as my map. So make sure it's black. And now this layer, this line that I've drawn, matches in perfectly with my map. And I can just keep doing that for all the other areas where I know that there's needing to be a bridge, connecting areas, and I can just go back to those independent layers separately. Again, go to layer style, go to stroke, and just change the thickness of my bridge until it matches the rest of the streets. So I'll go now to shape 2 that I drew in, layer style, stroke, and again increase the thickness of this until it better matches the streets that I have. And there we go. So I've done this already, so I'll just show you the finished results here. So I'm just going to open up my completed Photoshop document. I'll close this first one. I'm not going to save my changes this time. So here is my completed map, and you can see I have the same original water and streets. I've put the streets layer on top, and in fact I don't have the original as viewable, I just have the water layer and the streets. So if I hide the streets, there's my water that's going to get cut out of the acrylic, and if I switch that over, there are my streets with all of the bridges that I drew in. Okay, so there's all of my lines, and I can play around with that if I want to clean up a line, go back over this bridge, maybe isn't thick enough here, use that same technique, getting that line to match. And then how I joined it in here is all I did is I rasterized my layer, and then I merge it to the layer below, which is the streets layer. Or what I could do is select, by holding the shift key, the layers I want to merge, right click, and go to merge layers. And now that bridge that's been refined and cleaned up to match is the proper thickness. Okay, so I've got this separated now. So I've got my water, I've got my streets. I'm going to one layer at a time save these. So I would just go to File, Save As. Now the important piece here is when I save this picture, the format needs to be a photo. So a JPEG is perfect. Okay, I'm going to call this New York Streets. Save it. And I've already created one like this, so I'll just show you what the process is. I'm going to replace this file, and what it's going to do is immediately ask you what quality do you want this JPEG to be, and I always recommend to take this cursor and drag it all the way to the right so you're at maximum quality, and hit OK so that you get the best and most refined image possible. So it's going to come out as clean as possible when we take this to Adobe Illustrator. Okay, so that was the step that I took prior to going to Illustrator, as shown in the video on how to make a map so that I can make it into a layered map and have the bridges over top of the water. So I would follow the video the exact same way from here, go into Adobe Illustrator, create a new file, again, same thing, set my units of measurement to inches, set my document to the size I want to cut. So I want to make this as a 5 by 7 inch photograph size, so 7 inches width, 5 inches height, create this document. I would place my picture. So I have my New York streets, place that one in. There it is. And just like the video showed, I'll then get the image trace menu up, choose the black and white logo. I'll get my tracing results with outline so I can see where my lines are going to be for any outline strokes. I'm going to increase the path percentage to 100 so I get as much detail as possible. I'm going to increase my corners to 100% so I get, again, as much refinement as possible. And I'm going to take my noise down so that I have nice clean lines being created. Ignore my white layer so that all I get is the detail of the maps, and hit expand. And here is my map ready for the next bit. So I'm just going to zoom out here. What I would do here as well is I would just shift this off to the side so it's out of the way, do the exact same process, place, go to the rivers image that I have, go back to that same image trace menu, get my black and white logo, tracing result with outlines, paths, crank it up to 100%, corners up to 100%, noise down to 1, ignore the white, and expand so that I only get the details of my map, which was the black section of the picture. So now I've got both my images. Here's my next step is I want to create a border. So I'm going to go to the rectangle tool, just click on my screen, and I'm going to set the first image to 1/4 of an inch smaller than my document, so 6.75 by 4.75 works perfect. I'm going to click a second time. This time I'm going to make this box the full size of my document, so 5 by 7. And then with my selection tool, I'm going to select both of these shapes I just created. The object menu I'm going to use to align them centered horizontally and align them centered vertically. And then I'm going to bring up a new menu, which is the Pathfinder tool from the window menu. And with the Pathfinder tool, what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the front layer. So it's going to subtract the center section. Now, if it doesn't work for you, that likely means that the smaller shape is the back layer and the larger shape is the front layer. So all I need to do is click on one of these shapes. So I'm going to click on the bigger one. I'm going to go to arrange and I'm going to go to send to back. So it is now behind the smaller image. So this function of the Pathfinder tool removes the front layer. So now the small shape has been put as the front layer because I moved the larger shape to the back. And when I click on this option, now it cuts the center or smaller shape out and creates a border for me. So I can get rid of the Pathfinder tool here for now. I'm going to make a copy of this. So on my keyboard, it's Control and C to copy it, or just edit here at the menu and copy, and then again edit and paste, or Control and V on my keyboard. I'll move one box over to the right for my water, one box over to the left for my streets. I'm going to select both my objects, and then same thing, we're going to go back to that object menu, align, center these horizontally, and center these vertically. Now this works for me because my edge of my street document is the same as the border, and when I do that same step with the waterway here, when I center these vertically and horizontally, it's going to put these so that they would overlap each other perfectly. But be aware, if your image is going to be a smaller shape or size, you may need to align it differently to get your picture to line up once you put them over top of each other. So now that I've got these, I want to join them together. I'm going to bring back that Pathfinder tool again. And this time, instead of removing the front object, I'm going to join the objects together. So it's the Unite tool, and now this is going to become one. And that's one layer for me to work with. And then I'm going to do the same thing for my water and that border box. Join those together. And now I've got my two images. I'll just show you how these can layer together. So I'm going to change my water to be blue, like the blue acrylic that I'm going to use to cut this out with. And if I just move these, actually what I'll do is use that same menu option, center those horizontally, center these vertically, and then get these up in the center of my document. There's my water on top, and then again, if I just use that same arrange function, send the water layer to the back, the streets are now on top, the bridges sit on top, and just like with my laser cutouts, this would be how my design will work. So the important piece to this now is, again, making sure that all of my designs have a stroke applied to them that's 0.25 of a point thick, and each stroke should be a color. So don't use black, don't use white. Red works wonderfully, blue works fine, yellow is fine, green is fine. Just pick a color and go with it. Okay, fill is going to be what we want to remove if we're not looking to engrave the surface. Uh, and then that could be how I cut these two objects out. So I'd have my streets all cut out, I'd have my waterway all cut out, and that would work no problem. Now I could even too, like I talked about during the demo with the laser, fancy this up, put a picture inside of here. My picture just needs to fit inside the outside edges of my design. So as long as it's matching inside the same, I can engrave the picture and I can cut out the design and the picture will be engraved in the cutout. For the purposes of my project example here, I didn't do that, so I'm not going to do that here. But that would be my design ready to go to the laser now. So that is one option for how you can create your layered image. It doesn't have to be a 5 by 7 inch photograph size. It could be the full 10-inch by 12-inch work area of your material. It could be multiple layers cut from the acrylic and the wood in smaller sizes like I've done here, multiples of the same thing or multiples of different things using smaller sizes, totally up to you how you want to do this. So stay tuned, there's going to be two more videos like this coming. One will be for a stacked graphic and the other one will be for a depth image showing you how you can further utilize these platforms and the laser engraver for making your project. All right, ladies and gentlemen, pitter patter.